Oh, the music's in the background. Alex, how are you?
I'm doing good. How are you doing this morning? Morning, right?
It is. It's 11 o'clock in the morning, and it is a balmy 28 degrees today. So we're getting up to some perfect weather.
Nice. For American viewers, that's with our made up system of measurements. That's what, like 80 degrees Fahrenheit, something like that.
Be more than 82. That. I reckon it might be like 90.
Oh, really? Okay.
Someone will correct us because it's like
how hot do you keep your fish? It's like 20.
Oh no, maybe you're right. Maybe it is. I keep them, depending on the tank, usually around 24 degrees. Which I don't know.
Maybe you're right.
Like
yeah, I might be. It's probably, we'll split the difference. We'll call it 85.
All right. Well, that's the stream. So thank you for joining me. And how are you?
I'm doing well. Yeah, I started off the morning, had a weird sleep schedule. So I started off the morning watching some of you guys down under streaming. And then I caught Father Fish out of Florida and some American streams, a German stream. And then it's kind of been a fishy kind of day in general. Just kind of hurt my ribs a couple of weeks back. So I'm not doing water changes and lifting anything. So I've been enjoying sitting in on streams more than actually like doing any sort of work, especially with the shutdown and everything too. So
my wife wants to do gardening after this. Maybe I should hurt my ribs.
Yeah. I made the mistake. Oh, pardon me.
You guys are going to quickly say hello to the people in the chat. So Nathan, thanks for joining us. T-Bone, Chevy, Lauren, K-Town, long time no see. Pete Belinsky, how you all doing? Thanks for joining us. Chris, Multi-Tank Addiction, # Plywood Tank. Where's that coming from? Then Ed's picking up cichlids. Someone's, someone's raiding us with the plywood tank. Who are you watching this morning from Australia?
Let's see here. Well, first I started watching some reruns of Dr. Black and Blake.
Yep.
And who was the other one? He was live on somebody else's stream that was a smaller channel that I'd never seen before, but he had I think he had dreads, if I remember correctly. It's like 3 a.m. my time though, so
I just felt bad. I'm like, have I missed someone? I didn't realize someone was streaming this morning. But,
I think their channel had maybe like 300 subscribers. It was pretty small, but I literally have just been searching out anybody who's new or anybody who is streaming live.
Sir Prawn a lot. He's an Aussie with long hair. Maybe.
Okay, it might be. I can tell you later and look. He had a bunch of like DIY tanks, and he was in northern, I think somewhere up near the reef, and had a bunch of salt tanks and fresh tanks. So.
I'll have to find out who that is because
okay,
I like to go up there as often as I can.
Yeah.
So for those that are new to the Aqua Experience, this is episode 22. It's been really fun talking to people all over the world, YouTubers, people that run fish stores, just people that are in the industry, predominantly the ones that I can find in Australia. But no word of a lie, a long time ago, before I ever had a YouTube channel, I used to watch you and Rachel O'Leary and King of DIY and stuff. And all of a sudden you popped up on Facebook and I was like, oh, I've got to talk to Alex. And thank you. You said, yeah, just send me $1,000 and I'll join you for about 50 minutes or so. Yeah.
And then I said, actually, it's 1,500. The last minute. In the mail.
1,500 Aussie dollars would be about $1,000. But generally, what I've been doing is sort of just rewinding, going right back to the beginning with everybody. And what started you keeping fish? Where did it all begin for you? What's the story?
Well, I mean, I feel like it's a pretty boring story in that it's so similar to so many people. The very first fish I kept, so I don't know if they do it down there. I bet they do because, you know, carny folks get around all over. But carnivals go town to town, and we had a carnival come through Seattle. It's the city I grew up in and around the area. And they had one of those carnival booths where you threw, you know, a penny into bowls with goldfish, just the feeder goldfish. And if you could make a penny into a bowl with a fish, a bunch didn't have fish, and you know, they kept it might have been, I think you either had to make 3 pennies or 1 quarter. So their goal was to like get people to throw quarters, you know. But I made the pennies at like, I don't know, 5 or something silly, you know, just a handful of pennies one at a time. But I got this goldfish, Comet Goldfish, nothing special, literally a feeder fish. You know, they'd probably come into town and hit the big box store and buy out all the little feeder fish and call it good. And I took that home and literally kept it in a glass bowl with no decorations. I feel like a monster. And kept it in like a 1-gallon glass bowl, named it Elvis, and had it till I was probably 9 or 10. Like it lived probably 5 years or something like that. We'd change the water every few days at least, which was easy enough. You just like pour it out and fill it back up. We didn't use dechlorinator or anything though.
Yeah.
And so I had that fish, and that always entertained me. I mean, that was one of the first pets I could have because my mother and I both have allergies to pets. So we didn't have too many cats, or we had a dog for a while, but then she got too sick from it. But in any case, so then I got into guppies. That was the next fish I kept. So kind of like a lot of people, I had some guppies from, you know, just the normal big pet store. It's called Petco over here, or PetSmart, and big chain. And so I went and got some guppies that my parents got me, kept that in the bowl, and they died. They kept dying. We weren't doing as many water changes, and I put plastic plants in there. You know, this is before the internet was anything useful for, you know, like, I mean, you couldn't really look up anything on fish keeping at that point, other than like, I remember Encarta was a thing, like World Encyclopedia. So you just had the fish keeping entry, and that was it. So didn't really have any guidance or help at that point. And then I remember AOL online got big, and there were forums. Yeah.
Later.
You can have my rat note, everyone.
Sorry, the front door was open and I had my dog go off. I'm like, oh, I've got to go.
Oh, no, it's okay. It's all right. So,
sorry, you're talking about AOL? What was that?
Oh yeah, so I got into America Online. I don't know if you knew about. Was that an internet thing down there too at all? It
I
was
just
like
thought it
our
was an internet service provider.
yeah. So like you've got mail like that. I don't know if you know that little voice that's a robot from the 90s, but so that came up, and then there were chat rooms where you could talk about fish. Finally, there were websites in the early and mid 90s, but you had to know the URL. There was no search engine really that would tell you where they were.
Okay.
So I found the chats that had adults that were into fish and started kind of learning about everything I was doing wrong at probably 11 years old by then. And I think on my 10th birthday, my parents bought me my first like real tank with a filter and everything. So by that point, I had a tank with a filter. Before that, though, every summer, as a little kid from 5 or 6, even with the goldfish, I'd go catch frogs and newts and salamanders and fish. And I'd had basically paludariums or terrariums, and I'd keep them in there as long as I could. I'd raise tadpoles. So kind of the little boy, little kid, I guess, girls do that too, but the little kid story of catching everything I could get my hands on and keeping it. Yeah, and then from there, when I was about 12 years old, I got in contact with a guy who ran a company called Guppy Train, and they specialized in bringing guppies over from Japan, China, Indonesia, Thailand, and he had like every kind of guppy you could imagine back in the day. And I think I found him in Tropical Fish magazine or something like that. There were only a handful of mainstream magazines that were nationwide. So in the back they'd have people would advertise like call me or write this mailing address for a list of the fish I keep, and then you can order whatever's on the list at the time. And then you could also contact local clubs that way and say like, I'm looking for this or that. Does anybody have it? So it's pretty different than now. But I got my hands on some silver Delta tail metallic silver and purple guppies. And I saved up mowing lawns, and at 12 years old, and I think I got 3 of them. It was over $100 at the time. And
Wow.
so, the purple color was pretty new, like that really bright purple. And then the cobra or snakeskin, whatever they were calling it, was also like in that combo was new. So there were like 2 or 3 things new about that species or that strain at the time. So I started selling them, and it had to be really soon after that, eBay came out. So I started selling them on eBay, and that's how I kind of made money on the side, and then got more tanks and got into other fish. So that's kind of what launched it. But yeah, pretty early on, I decided that like I should make money with fish. Like that was my brain as a kid was like, I better sell these. And I had a pretty good habit of getting all my other friends to go get tanks, and their parents would like hate me, because I got them into it for like, either they'd be into it for like a week and then they'd let it get all full of algae, and that was that. So,
Yeah.
But then in high school, fish were not that cool. I literally had a fish tank in my closet. So when my friends came over, I would close the door so they didn't know I was raising guppies. And probably by the end of high school, I didn't care. But when I was 14, 15, 16, I didn't want the cool kids that came over to know that I was into that. So it was kind of hidden. And then when I got ready to go away to university, couldn't keep any fish, lived on campus, and then lived in a house that was not responsible to keep fish in the way we lived with, you always had a pint somewhere sitting around, and somebody would have put something in the fish tank, So it wasn't until, yeah, pretty much, yeah. So it wasn't until later that I was able to get fish. So by the end of college, I got fish again. And yeah, so I basically got fish again then for a while. And then my mom had a brain aneurysm. Sorry, this is like a life story. I'm almost done.
No.
And then
That's the point. It's
Okay.
awesome. It's good.
Okay. All right. So then my mom had a brain aneurysm and was like on life support. It was a big, it was a serious deal. She was had to do rehab and learn to, walk and eat and use her arms and everything again. Like she almost didn't make it. So I moved back from that town that I had been in for, I think 7 years. I lived in the town that was a few hours from Seattle, up on the Canadian border, actually, right near Vancouver, BC, Canada. So I had moved back, but I had to get rid of all the tanks that I had. My senior year of college, I had some tanks again, and then I got rid of them. Moved back, had to live with the parents in my mid-20s, and that didn't feel the best. But at the same time, I was kind of taking care of my mom, so it was all right. But then met my wife after a few years of living at home and working. I was working as drawing artwork at a grocery store with chalk. So I was kind of just existing and not really into anything or passionate about anything. And then all of a sudden met my wife through a friend of a friend and basically moved in with her in the heart of the city. And I've been an artist and a tattoo artist since 18 years old. That's been a side job. So I started doing tattoos and getting into kind of artsy stuff, having gallery shows and things like that. So moving into the city was a big change from the suburbs. Made it so I actually owned a gallery for a while, for 3 years, until I got hit by lightning a couple years ago, and that changed everything again.
What?
Yeah. It actually happened while I've had the channel for 4 years as of the 26th of this month, I think. Like, I've been active. I've had the channel since 2008 or 9, but everything was silly before that. It was just like, this is my tank, and there was no talking, and it was poor quality film, and it was a post every 2 years or something. So I deleted all those, and I kind of revamped the channel, and I decided that I was living in the city. I had the gallery space, and so I got into a gallery space next to mine had a bunch of photos of aquascaping. And so I was checking those out, and I was like, what is this? Like, so it's probably 7 or 8 years ago is when this started. And so I was like, what is this kind of stuff? I've never seen this level of, it was, kind of like Takashi Amano's type aquascaping. Yeah. And so it really blew me away, and I couldn't find much about it on YouTube or anything at the time. And then kind of forgot about it. And then so it was 6 years ago, waited another 2 years. I found the Green Machine and I guess George Farmer and Oliver Knott were kind of both lurking around on other people's channels. I don't know if they had their own at that point, but I got really into that. And so I showed my wife, and I was like, look, in Seattle, we have very, very dark and long winters. Our shortest days are 8 hours about 8 hours of light, and rain for months. So like usually it starts raining in October, and it keeps going until maybe May or June, depending. And it's just kind of gray, overcast, on and off rainy, and about, a few degrees above freezing for 4 or 5 of the months is pretty common for your temperatures. I mean, maybe 10, or for you guys, maybe like 4 to 8 degrees above freezing is the most it would get for the high of the day. So it's a very kind of gray and bleak in Seattle for a lot of it. It's a little bit cooler than like London's climate, and right on the Pacific Ocean, it kind of keeps us really cool. We don't get too cold, so we don't even get snow like some places much. It just stays like right above freezing and raining most of the time with fog. So but the last few years, our weather's actually really changed. I don't know if it's global climate change or what, but our temperatures are very warm and sunny in the summers pretty reliably the last 5 or 6 years. In any case, long way to say that my wife had lived in Florida, which is very sunny. And so I weaseled my way into getting our first tank in the house, or in the apartment we live in, a flat, if I guess. I said, well, this is UV light. If we grow plants, like this will be a way to get rid of the darkness. So she said, okay, because she wanted to buy a light to cheer herself up, or to, kind of help her mood and have a UV light in the house when she got off work. So instead, it was the same price to go get a Fluval or whatever. Yeah, I think it was a Fluval light, and that would grow plants. So I just got the most powerful aquarium light I could find for freshwater tanks at the time. Yep. And started growing plants, which I'd kept some plants, but that was really when I got into the hobby hardcore. So yeah, 6 years ago is when I really started paying attention to study history, and then decided to get an archaeology major. So that ended up making me having to study biology, anatomy, and geology also. And so kind of with all those things combined, it gave me a nice overview, set me up for understanding some of the biology and ecology of freshwater, fish keeping. So
is that sort of why you came up with the name of your channel? Like, that's the way you sort of view it and perceive it and go, that's what interests me about it.
Yeah, so it's kind of a funny story in that I decided initially, and I'll admit this more freely to another country than to my own right now, because it's so divisive in our country at the moment. But so the channel, I started it without listing the videos public at all. It was a vlog for myself. So I just figured that I'd document how I was growing and what I was learning and what fish I kept when. Because, you look back on old pictures and sometimes you forget the context. So I thought, well, it's so easy to record stuff these days. Why don't I just make a video diary rather than actually keeping because when I was younger too, I kept a log of my aquariums. Like the nitrates were this, the plants did this fish died, this fish had babies, whatever. And so I figured, well, I'll do it on video for myself, and then that way I can go back through and really have detailed info. So my first videos were all the temperature, and they're very dry, very, very dry, and they were marked private. And then when I started thinking about it and watching some of the other channels like Dustin's Planted Fish Tanks and Aquarium Co-op, King of DIY, I'm trying to think, those were kind of and Rachel O'Leary, those were kind of the big channels for the States anyways. And then the Green Machine with, was this Michael, is it Finley or Michael, starts with an F.
I don't know the Green Machine that well, to be honest.
Yeah, so they're out of the UK, but they're definitely kind of, while they've been around since actually or their founders have been into it since the early 90s. So they were kind of the UK equivalent of Takashi Amano. They did it very early, but it just was not very popular. It was very small. And whereas he kind of made it an art form. France had some, there's Patrick Blanc, who does the plant walls, but he also would do aquarium, an aquarium at the base of a plant wall. But he's well known for doing 6-story buildings with vegetation on the outside in artful patterns. So there was kind of a few things going on in the 90s. James Finley, not Michael. I don't know why I thought Michael. Yeah, that's him.
Yeah. Look at that. I did research on the spot.
There you go. Yeah. So that's the other thing. So since I got hit by the lightning, pardon me if I space out, that happens sometimes now. My short-term memory is rubbish. It's if you tell me a phone number, I will not remember it. If I meet you and you tell me your name, I will not remember it. But if you are telling a story about a fish discovered in 1921 on this river, for some reason that I can like picture it and remember it. Before I got hit, I had I mean, I don't know, I guess it's arguable whether it's a thing or not, but I had a very photographic memory in that I could close my eyes and think about things in a way where I could kind of pull them back from my memory based on visual cues that I had thought of. So like, even if we were talking about something completely unrelated, I would be able to remember the room we were sitting in, and then like, oh, there was a vase over there. That's when you told me about this. So it's kind of been weird to lose that. And now it's just kind of,
Can you talk about it? Can you, or don't like talking about it? What?
Yeah, no, I can talk about it. Yeah,
So
I'm
what
an
happened?
open.
Set the scene and said, what were you doing? And like, also, Dr. Pepper is so hard to find over here, and it's one of my favorite drinks. So,
Oh man, I went to Europe and I found it in Paris, and I was like, oh, I thought it was going to be hard to find, and it was all over the heart of Paris. And I was like, this is great. And then I went down to Marseille and down by Nice and Marseille, and none anywhere. And they were like, don't know what you're talking about. And, I speak a little bit of French, and they had no idea what I was talking about, most of them. And I was just like, no.
It used to be, they tried it for a couple of years when I was little, and you could get it everywhere. And then, I don't know, so whoever sort of imported it and bought it, I don't know, this mustn't have, they didn't realize how much I was buying, but they weren't thinking enough people were buying it. And then all of a sudden, you've got to go to like specialist stores to get it. But yeah.
Yeah. And then I got to Rome and they had it again. So I literally threw out T-shirts so that I could keep more Dr. Pepper while my wife and I backpacked through Europe after that. She was like, what are you doing? You're throwing out shirts? And I was like, well, they have Dr. Pepper here. So, a side tangent, so I quit drinking 12 years ago, basically. I mean, I'll have a sip if someone's having a party or whatever, but for me, it just didn't work out. I had a lot of friends die driving, and a couple friends died from drugs and, alcohol and just that lifestyle. And I was into that pretty heavily in my teenage years and early 20s. And so I got out of it, and now fish has really replaced a lot of, if instead of going to the bar, I like go over to my tanks and work on them in that time, or I draw.
It's a huge portion of people that keep fish. They have addictive personalities, and they do something bad. It's not healthy. It's not good for a while, and then stop. And then all of a sudden, you go from having 10 fish tanks to 50, or you've got a YouTube channel, you got videos all the time, and you're learning more and more. And it's really interesting to see how, you can go one way or the other, and sometimes it just clicks, and sometimes it takes a long time to eventually click. But
I mean, I had some serious. I mean, I know a lot of people say that they're into stuff that's troublesome, but I mean, I had friends that were murdered. I had organized crime got involved with one of my roommates and killed his dog. And when we came home, his dog it was bad. And held at gunpoint. So I actually had a lot of PTSD and like emotional trauma from kind of situations I got myself into most of the time, like in hindsight. But at the time it seemed like, I was just sitting there drinking and hanging out with people who were party people, and the situation devolved. But in any case, I had a lot of healing I needed to do. Both I'd also gotten into a fight that broke my spine at my neck, and broken my jaw, my nose. My nose is a little crooked. I always notice it, and nobody else probably does. But if you look, one of my nostrils is a little higher than the other. But yeah, so I had some serious pain issues from my neck too, chronic pain. And that's what led me getting into other drugs too, actually, like years back. And so the last 10 years or so, I quit drinking 12 years ago. I was still smoking and herb and other things. And then I got out of all of it. And so when I kind of took that, leap, I needed something to fill that obsessive time. And at first it was art, and then art became my full-time day job, and I couldn't have my passion be my release also, if that makes sense. Like
Yeah,
I felt like I couldn't do it all day, every day, and then come home and try to get a mental and emotional relief from that.
that's
So
one
then
reason I don't breed fish that much as well. Like,
okay.
I've thought about two ways of like, all right, I want to do this in the fish room, but there was one avenue was get friggin' 10 small tanks and start breeding different guppies and all that. And that would be cool. But then I'm like, oh, it's already enough work looking after 10 tanks, let alone trying to breed them, trying to separate them, trying to grow them, trying to sell them. And then, like, exactly as you said, like, it's got to be a release as well. So it's, yeah, that's exactly how I sort of feel about it. But
Yeah.
Go back. The lightning strike. I can't get past
Okay.
that.
So the lightning strike. I'll set the scene. The scene is right here. So if you take a look around, I'm up on the 3rd floor.
Yep.
And we're kind of on a hill looking out over part of Seattle. So we're like in the heart of Seattle.
That's the closest I've been to Seattle. Thank you.
And yeah, actually the sun's setting over the Cascades, the ocean's out that way, the Puget Sound, which is saltwater, is right in between the ocean, those mountains that are out there. And then it's the ocean, and then I could swim to you,
Yeah,
just
exactly.
a couple hours swimming probably. But and we got mountains on the other side of us too. So the nature is also a big part of anybody who grows up in Seattle. Nature probably is inherently a part of camping and kayaking and skiing and snowboarding and skateboarding, all that stuff.
Grunge.
It's a very outdoors city. So, but yeah, so I was literally standing right here on my deck, and I thought it was about one in the morning, and like 12:45 or something, and or I guess 20. What does that be for you guys? 24:45, or 23:45? Yeah.
Yep.
2345 minutes, whatever. Sorry. Trying to adapt to if there aren't Americans watching, because I hate Americans that don't make any attempt to to like think about it. At least I may be wrong, but I'm trying. Okay. So I was standing here and I thought, wow, that is a very, very ominous cloud. That's interesting. And then, Seattle doesn't get much lightning. We get maybe 15 storms a year, something like that. 15 days a year of lightning.
You just get rain, but not storms.
It's super lame. Yeah. We get cold rainstorms. That's it. And out of nowhere, right here, these trees, these purple plum trees and cherry trees, I saw little fingers of purplish blue light dancing on the ends of it. And I literally thought I was hallucinating. It was just a split second of me kind of, and I was hanging over the railing like this with a Dr. Pepper and I think I was smoking, and just kind of looking out on the city thinking that cloud looks like trouble. And it was June, and it's not like a time of year that we get a ton of storms. Usually we kind of get them at the end of summer, or earlier in spring. And so I was just thinking, yeah, that's really nice. And I shoot photography, like, and sell it as for tourists coming through the city, of lightning around Seattle when it happens. So I'm usually like, get my gear and go. I'm pretty aware of it. And out of nowhere, that the cloud was still very far in the distance, and it was one ginormous cloud, like a big storm cell. And it hadn't made any thunder or lightning. We could see it on the horizon a long ways, and I'd been watching it, and it was coming our way. And where the water stops and land starts is where I think the lightning struck. Like, that caused it an updraft, and that's what caused the friction for the lightning. And it literally, I saw the dancing purple out here for maybe, it felt like 30 seconds, but it was probably 1 or 2 seconds. And what it was is it's a step leader is what they call it. and it's the static and grounded electricity reaching up into the sky, which is trying to make a full circuit with the energy in the sky. And so just before a lightning strike, you'll see on the ground there's a little it looks like a staircase that comes up that's much lighter colored than the actual bolt. But it came, it hit me, and it picked me up off my feet. It threw me through these French doors here. It busted the center part, and then this table right in here, I landed sideways on the table and hit head first. So I broke my skull, and apparently where I got hit, I was sitting like this on the railing, and it hit right in my face and mouth because it blew out. I've had to get 19 teeth. Either they're fake or I'm waiting to get them replaced. So even 2 years later, because over here, I don't know what the dental system's like over there, but over here it's about $2,000 a tooth to get an implant, or you can pull them all and get dentures. But it's kind of loud out there because of cars. But in any case, so yeah, it knocked me in here, broke the doors open, and then I didn't hear anything except for like a kind of when your ears ring when something's too loud. I don't know if you've heard a firework or something that's too loud, but kind of that like throbbing noise of silence when the silence is deafening. That feeling is what I heard. And I then kind of rolled over onto my knees, and my wife came running up the stairs here from our bedroom and was like, "What the hell was that?" You know, and I was like, I don't know. I think I got hit by lightning. And she was just like, "What? Are you on drugs?
Yeah, what's in
Like
that
what?
cigarette?
Yeah, what's happening? What are you talking about?" And you know, she hadn't heard any thunder yet. Like it wasn't a big roaring storm. It had been one bolt. And then just a few moments later, the next big crash came, and you know, then the storm kept going. It was overhead within a couple minutes. But we called the paramedics, and basically they checked me out. They had an EKG right there, and they're like, "We think you're okay." I had like a busted up mouth, and they're like, "We could take you to the emergency room, but it's a 5-hour wait tonight," because I think it was a Friday night. And so in the city, the emergency room here is always nuts. And so I was like, I don't want to deal with that. And they said, it wasn't a direct hit. Don't worry. Like you'd be in a lot worse shape is what their words were. And literally I kind of just let them assess me and then they left. And then my wife helped me downstairs, and I was like, I'm in a lot of pain in a lot of weird places and stuff. And a couple teeth fell out literally as we were after that. So we realized it was big trouble. Tried to change my clothes, and my pants had melted to my legs. I was wearing like kind of pajama bottoms or trainers, you know, and that synthetic material had melted to my skin, and I couldn't take them off. It was stuck on the back of my legs. So it had exited through the back of both kneecaps and onto a metal railing is where it like went through me and then hit and melted all the nails in our wooden deck out there. So all the nail heads melted into little puddles.
Wow.
Yeah, even in the wood, which was really odd. I don't know, you know. So then later I you know, obviously I ended up in the hospital and doing MRIs, and they saw that my skull had been split in the front. So the orbital, I had a small fracture back here, and then I also completely imploded a vertebrae in my L5 to S1 disc and vertebrae above it. So the L5, literally, usually you have a little squishy plate in between, and it got so hot from the lightning that it vaporized it or exploded it or something. So they were really worried that I would not be able to walk from the belly button down, basically, that was going to destabilize. So that was a really crazy time. I already had the channel and everything. And at first I thought I was doing okay, except for some, the teeth injuries, the fractured skull. And I thought I'd be okay. I didn't look that bad. And then within a week, I started forgetting how to say certain words and forgetting how to talk. And apparently, when you get electrocuted, it's just very odd. It can be right away or it can be later. But what it did is it melted they call it myelin sheaths that connect nerves in your brain. So it mimics Alzheimer's or Parkinson's very similarly. And you lose those electronic or potassium ion connections in your brain. The signals just drop. And so they try to rewire themselves, but they miswire a lot until you relearn it correctly. So I'd be saying, like, can I have a glass of potatoes instead of milk or something? So it was very odd, and I had to go to rehabilitative therapy for 6 months off and on, and I kind of documented it on the channel, but for the most part, I tried to keep it, like, I would get all the energy I could and tried to keep it kind of off the channel as far as how bad off I was. But I mean, you can tell, like, I'm like a zombie. It looks like I've had a lobotomy afterwards for a while when I was on the channell.
You got Jesse from HC Aqua saying, I remember when it happened and you weren't able to explain it this well. As, like, back then, yeah, so exactly. So it's kind of like, it feels like a dream almost, and some of it, like, my wife had to tell me, like, what exactly had happened, but then we talked to the university, and they had satellite image, and it had been an 8 mile long, so I don't know, 13 kilometers or something, 14-kilometer long bolt of lightning that came from the cloud that hit me. So very, very large lightning bolt. I thought that was insane, and I'm like, there's no way that that's the case. But apparently the world record's 64 miles. So it wasn't even anywhere near, like almost 100 or over 100 kilometers lightning has traveled from storms before. So the 8 miles was big, and that shows that it had a lot of energy. So they said it doesn't matter if it was direct, non-direct, whatever happened. It was just so much energy. But luckily it didn't damage my heart, but it did damage my liver, my spleen, and my kidney. And I didn't find this out till months later, like literally went to the bathroom, blood, so it was very odd how long, like 6 months out, and I was still getting infections on my skin. Like, I would have bruising that would show up, and it turned out that all the nerves were dead under the skin there, and it was like a pocket of cooked flesh that had gotten infected. So I had all these abscesses that they'd have to drain, and then I did a skin graft from my leg over one of them, and so yeah, it was a pretty big medical pain in the butt, to say the least. Think about when you go get, I don't know, like, I've seen videos of people on the internet when they get hit by lightning or something and then get up and walk off, and you go, whoa, how lucky is that? But then you don't think about all the things that you might have to deal with afterwards.
Well, and that was just it too. Like, it knocked me to the ground, and kind of like, basically it was like getting punched, and knocked out cold for a minute. It felt like someone grabbed me by the back of the neck, like, or by my coat, and just picked me up and threw me like a rag doll, and was like, like the hand of God just picked me up and threw me, backwards. Almost like a bungee jumping. I don't know if anybody's been bungee jumping, but like when you bounce, that feeling of like all of a sudden your momentum's going the complete opposite way. But I didn't feel pain at all at first. Just pure shock, Even when the medics came, I wasn't feeling pain. I just had blood coming out my mouth and my nose and stuff. And they thought it was all, like, they thought I got scared, turned, hit the door, and ran into the door, or that it was indirect and that I got scared and hit my face on the door. So that was their initial thoughts, because they never had me stand up. So they didn't see the burns all down the back of my legs. And at that point, the burn hadn't really come out much on my face. It was just, it was a small burn in the end. But I have scars. I don't know how visible they are on this live stream, but I have scars that radiate out from around and into my tattoos that are kind of like fractal shaped. Probably hard to see them, but they're on both sides of my legs. So yeah. And the local news came and bugged me like 3 weeks after it happened. They in our country, they published the 911 calls. And so they listened to them and see if anything interesting happened. So they found out that like there was a lightning call strike. And of course, then I had all these news stations bugging me while I was recovering. I can imagine
people sitting there listening to this going, what have you got? Like, I just got some cat stuck in it. This dude got hit by lightning. Yeah, let's call him.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And then it became, you know, like 2 news stations both had, because they all get it the same day and have their interns or whatever listen and or look through all the info. So they all called me on the same day. And the biggest one in town literally just showed up pounding on the door, just like, and I was like, I'm not getting whoever that is, you know, I'm not converting to that religion today, whoever it is, you know. And eventually they just didn't leave. And so my wife got the door and they were, you know, they did a story. And I just was kind of like, okay, and told everyone, you know, if you want to see it, they did a story about it. I'm done. So there are 2 news stories out there on the internet if people go hunting. But yeah, the other thing that was really crazy was at that time, I wasn't, I'm sorry, what was that?
Did you get some subscribers from?
Not really, honestly. I mean, I had some people that were very interested, and somebody set up, one of my viewers set up a GoFundMe, which was very sweet of them. I had with my dental bills, and then I mean I had dual insurance, but in the US that only covers certain things, you know, and dentals you get $1,500 covered a year, and that's the max. And that's not even one tooth. If you need like a root canal and like a gum graft or, you know, anything, like that'll cover like a root canal and a buildup. And I needed 19 teeth dealt with. And I also needed bone, my septum and my palate, like the roof of my mouth. I had a hole so you could see from my nose straight into my mouth. It had ripped a hole from the roof of my mouth into my sinuses. So they had to graft that back together at the dentist. Well, that's considered dental and not medical, which is stupid. I'm like, how's your mouth not part of your body? I feel like that should all be considered medical. You know? Yeah,
I found Seattle man says he was struck by lightning.
That's probably it.
Wow, when I stumbled across your YouTube channel, I can't remember exactly what it was. There's something in particular you were doing that I was trying to do, and I watched a couple of your videos.
Did you get hit by lightning?
No. That was Lazarus back here. He's like, holy hell, that's crazy. I tried not to get hit by lightning so far. I've been doing pretty good.
Well, the funny part is, like, I should have been hit by lightning from some of the things I've done in my life when I was younger. Like, I would go out, and in the U.S., I'd go down to Florida, I'd go down to Texas, where they get these massive storms. When they'd have, like, a hurricane coming in, I'd bring my DSLR camera and literally go follow the bands, you know, of tornadoes and lightning. Like, I really enjoyed storm chasing. So the fact that I'm at home in the state with the second least lightning out of 50 in the country is, like, you know, it's comical in a sick way. So
that's crazy. Well, I didn't expect that to come up at all, and we are at the 50-minute mark.
Oh, geez. How long do you do this for? An hour?
Yeah, we normally do it for just an hour, just over an hour. It's cool. But I was going to ask you.
I haven't covered anything fish related. I'm sorry. I'm the worst guest ever.
Doesn't matter. Means that we'll have to do another episode soon.
Yeah, here's some fish in the meantime while we talk.
That one's blue like a lightning bolt. No.
Yeah, it was like a bluish purple. So that's the other funny thing is I had a strain of guppies I'd been breeding for 2 years and trying to perfect, and they were actually endlers, but they had some guppy in them, and they were rainbow tiger endlers. And I'd been breeding them so that they had a white skirt around all their fins, and that they had a purple kind of leer tail, like, so it was forked. If folks don't know what that is, and then it had yellow that turned to purple, which is like a weird transition of kind of sparkly, like iridescent colors. And so I ended up naming them Volta for like electricity. Volta endlers. And so for a while in the Northwest, people were buying my Volta endlers.
That's cool.
But I kind of get into trying to breed a strain or a type of fish that's hard, and then if I can do it, I'll literally like sell them all like a week later, and then I'll pick something else. So it's definitely like the challenge. And then there's exceptions like Panda Loaches. Like, I love them. They're adorable, and I like, they'll come and they'll like kind of like feed on my fingers off the oils on your skin and stuff, and play with, like, if I'm cutting grass in the tanks and stuff. So they're one that like is near and dear to me. And guppies will probably always have some sort of guppy and some sort of endler. I've got 16 tanks right now, and my landlord knows about half of one. So my wife has had this place for 15 years.
Okay.
And whenever we call the landlord for help with anything, he doesn't come. He says, you can fix it and take it out of rent. He's usually in Pakistan. And so he's like out of sight, out of mind. And the building was built in the 1960s. And I asked him, hey, you think it'd be okay if I got a fountain, like with water in it, is what I asked him years ago. And I was like, I wanted to put like a goldfish in it and just, have like a little relaxing meditative fountain. And he was like, yeah, I don't care. The lease said no fish tanks. He's like, I don't care. Like, if it breaks, you're cleaning it up though. That's the deal. And I was like, okay. And then as the years have gone on, I've just gotten bolder and bolder. And literally in 7 years, he hasn't come to the building once. So, even though I know it's oh so wrong, my wife has paid, and I have paid in $170,000 over the last 16 years to this guy. So we've probably bought in the flat by this point,
Exactly, yeah. And I suppose you could always argue that you make an income out of it. Like YouTube, that it's not just that you've got a pet there for any.
Yeah.
There's a more, not legitimate, but there's a bigger reason, I suppose, behind it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's really the reason why, though, that I don't have any tanks over about 46 gallons is my biggest tank.
Okay.
So in theory, it'd be manageable if one broke. I mean, it would still be real bad, but it wouldn't destroy the building like, 150 gallon or, whatever,
See, we are in my garage.
That's nice.
Predominantly my tanks are in my garage. I've got one tank inside that's 55 gallons. And then I've got a 23 liter fluval edge with no water because I'm doing a dry start on it. But if anything breaks out here, we're all good. And over here, I have a goldfish tank with a super powerful filter. And
is that the one you put the pleco in?
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah.
Every second day, if I don't fill the water up, like keep topping it up because of evaporation, it hits the rocks and spouts out, and I end up with a wet floor all the time.
That's not good if you have carpet.
No, it's not ideal. No. So you were at the stage when I went, hang on, let's go back to the lightning. You were at the point you were saying you sort of done your own vlog, kept all your videos private, and then you started realizing, hang on.
Oh, yes. So I guess the whole start of it was before all the lightning and everything, I had 2 tanks, I think, at that time, just of guppies and shrimp, and just kind of like a pretty diverse, a 20 long and a 15, I think, is what I was keeping. Okay. And so the shrimp were still kind of new. I mean, like it was new to have anything other than the cherry shrimp and tiger shrimp and ghost shrimp. All the other colors were newer still. So I was into those, and they were still kind of finicky. Even the Neocaridina were kind of finicky. So I was keeping notes on how to take care of them. But then I had friends who were just like, well, why don't you monitor, like start a channel where you could actually get some subscribers and things. And so I thought about it, and I was like, well, I just don't want to be responsible for all that. So first it started as a very, very informal, like, hey, nobody's going to see this, but here's my tanks, like really bad videos, where I was probably being really disrespectful to the few people who were actually asking questions and interested. And kind of as they got more interested, I'm just kind of the person to do research when I'm interested in any sort of hobby. So I did a lot of research into, the Iwagumi aquascaping method, about, Japanese aesthetics of, and then also Roman golden ratio, or using the golden ratio and the rule of thirds that we kind of use for photography too. They all kind of overlap. And so things like that, like I found interesting that like, oh, the Japanese and the Romans were doing this similar things like that far apart that long ago. And then, the fact that that kind of stuff was going on always interested me. So I started mentioning it in videos, and then people would be like, why are you talking about history on a fish channel? You're on a tangent. And then other people started liking it. And then I'm talking like maybe 80 people watching. And so the ones who liked it said like, keep making more. And, they sent me PayPal, like $20 or something. And they're like, if you keep telling us these stories, then we'll pay. Basically, a couple of them really encouraged me, retired guys. And then I thought about it really long and hard, and I was like, I'm going to make a go at this starting 4 years ago, I guess is when I started it, like I said, and called it The Secret History, Living in Your Aquarium. And I put up a video called Colonialism in Your Aquarium, I think is what it was called. And basically my thought was like, it was one of those kind of way out there hippy dippy thoughts that was like, whoa, man, like if you were in your fish tank, my filter's from China, my guppies are from Japan, my shrimp are from Taiwan, none of them get along. They were sold to me by a person in Taiwan or in San Francisco. These other fish came through from Venezuela, and it was settled by, so like guppies were discovered by John Lechamere Guppy, and he called them millions fish, but he was a colonial governor, and he collected them in Trinidad, Tobago, and Venezuela, and he liked them and kept them. Someone else scientifically went and found them, but they brought them back for the governor and said, look at these pretty little fish. So he put them in ponds and in some really early aquarium type containers in the early 1800s. And the interesting part to me is I did a little bit of reading, because I was like, I better tell the story of where guppies came from. And then I found out that they're pretty much extinct in the wild, in their wild form. And that really was really the most common fish I could think of in the hobby doesn't exist in the wild per se, untouched genetically. And so I thought that was weird. And so then I looked into it more, and the guy who the fish is named after, his grandson became an oil tycoon in Venezuela generations later, and they put a pipeline through the estuary and lagoons where the first fish were caught. and literally destroyed it. It broke all the breakwater of the kind of a bayou or swamps, you know, like Billabong kind of thing. Totally washed it out because of building that pipeline and digging a trench along the pipeline and then having ships coming in there. So ironically, he signed off and made money off of destroying the environment of the area, of the fish, of the guy who discovered or made the fish popular that the fish is named after. And so little stories like that, I was like, man, there are a lot of really weird stories. Or you know, if we're having a trade war with so and so and the price goes up of Congo puffers because there's civil war in Africa in the Congo. Things like that really started to interest me with my history and anthropology background. And so I kind of made it less about fish and more about political science, sociology, and then realized that there's not really that many people watching that genre. So then I started shifting more towards the science and then started slowly getting more viewers when the fish science was the primary part and the story that I could dig up behind it was part of it, but not the main focus. So it's kind of a roundabout way, but yeah, that was the idea. And I was unhappy with a lot of practices going on, and I still am in the hobby and in our society as a whole. You know, Western society, we've done a lot of really amazing things and we've done some not so great things. But I just find it really interesting how we impact the natural world and how we have this whole world now, and with all the plants and even the stones. Like we have stones that you get from China or Pakistan or India that we pay, you know, $40 for a funny shaped stone, you know, Oko or Dragonstone or whatever. And there's just so many elements in your tank. It's such a symbol of globalism, yet it does not seem like it whatsoever. And pretty soon I realized if I wanted to not make half of my country mad at me, I had to stay out of the political realm more so. And so I still try to talk about those things, but more objectively, because, you know, I get along with people who are very conservative, people who are extremely liberal. I have friends who are literally anarchists that live off the grid and they grow all their own food. And I have friends that are, you know, diehard Republican here, business owners that actually think fascism would be a good system as long as it had a good leader, you know, like. So I really do have friends on all ends of the spectrum, and I have family that were literally communists in the 1930s in America, and then I have fascist family members that were nationalists in the 1930s when I look back. So it is really like I try to keep it down to the humanity of each person I'm talking to and dealing with, and hopefully like maybe that can bridge the gap. And like most people, no matter how extreme their views are, like when it comes down to it one-on-one, like just not being a jerk is kind of the ethos that they all agree should be how we live. So
but it's so hard to do.
I know. Yeah, exactly.
Max
So,
has a question here. He
yeah.
said he might have missed it earlier, but do you have a history? Do you have a background in history or politics?
Yeah. So I have the history degree. And specifically, it's a history of the Middle East conflicts since post-colonial era, North Africa and Middle East post-colonialists. I know sounds specific, but at the same time, it's a huge topic. And then I wrote my thesis actually on Somali piracy and how the clan structures that were indigenous to the region, once the government failed, how those were basically in place and set up gangs and warlords like were ready to go the second the state failed because of that. And how actually in that thesis I talk a lot about fish, because what caused the piracy initially was the Chinese fishing trawlers came in and they would use giant nets. And at the time, Somalis would use literally like rowboats and small, 50 horsepower motors and things like that were cobbled together, old boats, and they would run them out there, these long boats, and they cast net, and they couldn't compete with the trawlers that have 2 mile wide nets and things, and processing ships that like actually freeze everything out there, and because they had no military and no enforcement, there was nobody to say what people could or couldn't do off their shores. And so they have one river in the country, and they were reliant on food aid at the time in the 90s and late 80s. And so because of that, camels were how they survived nomadically. But because of the Italian and British colonial era, they built these big cities that were reliant on international trade, which then became reliant on food aid, which then actually led to major famines because they were trying to survive off the ocean, which traditionally was only a small part of their diet. They were nomadic camel herders, and the population was far, far lower. But it had exploded during that colonial era because they were bringing in, resources, and boats were coming and going all the time. And they actually tried to grow bananas there and other things. And it started as kind of a militia kind of people who said, get out of our waters. And they just fire shots in the air and kind of scare the Chinese fishing boats off. Well, then American boats and European, both Greek and Italian, started dumping radioactive waste and oil and all sorts of nasty stuff that they couldn't find a place to sell, to bury it safely, hazardous waste. They just dumped it in the international water that was Somalia's. And so they started finding fish die-offs and things like that. So it started that way, and then Islamist extremists that are kind of native to the area also, as another mindset, had funding from Saudi Arabia and outside the area, unlike any other group, really. So quickly it turned from a good or a well-meaning attempt to keep their fishing grounds secure, and they said, let's just start trying to take these ships, but it really did start as something. They called it the Somali Coast Guard for the first 6 or 7 years, and very quickly, once the first ship got stolen, everyone realized, oh, this is a pretty good way to make money. Let's do this. So I thought that was pretty interesting, and it's another example of fish and globalism.
Absolutely. I listened to a lot of the Joe Rogan Experience. Like, I just love some guests that he's got on, and he had Frank. Oh, what's his name? I want to say Hopper, but I don't want to get it wrong.
Oh, sure.
Give me a sec, because I'll find it here. But they were talking about pesticides and the history of pesticides. Yeah.
Oh, like DDT and.
But what blew my mind was, they talking about how it impacted and shaped so much of the world and so many countries, the way that they approached just trying to look after their crops. And like, for example, they were talking about Ireland when they had a massive famine because all their potatoes destroyed. And that since then, like, you've learned things where you should try and grow multiple different varieties of similar food, so that if something gets in to kill something else, then you're not going to lose everything. You'll lose a portion. And just the way that it's also, all those pesticides are then now going into remote communities around the world that are living off the ocean. And finding like higher, what is it? Is it DDT? The higher poisonous
mercury and things like that too. I mean, all sorts of things. Yeah,
exactly. And these are people that live away from, Seattle, away from cities, away from the sort of that we're used to being poisoned by what we're doing. And it's insane.
An interesting little anecdote about that. So, and to finish up the education thing just real quick. So my other degree was cultural anthropology, which here is like the study of that has different meanings kind of around the world, but here it's kind of different than sociology, but kind of similar. So basically it's just studying current cultures and how they live every day, documenting it and trying not to be intrusive. And so what I studied was Native American culture in my area here in Washington, in the United States, northern Washington state and Canada, and a group called the Coast Salish people that had a 60% 60% when they did an anonymous test of adults on the reservation tested positive for opiates when I was in college. And so, heroin or whatever, Oxycontin, fentanyl. And so we, as the university, went in and tried to kind of document like what was going on. The life expectancy had dropped to 34 years old for males on the reservation. And poverty was just, very extreme there. Yet again, they used to fish for salmon completely. That's how they subsisted, was hunting and fishing for salmon. Well, the salmon runs have been ruined in that area for a long time. And now you can go out to sea with big boats and get salmons, no problem, or catch a couple here and there. But you can't catch enough to last a year and a week like they used to, or go whaling like they used to. It's illegal now. So it's kind of some interesting issues that I saw yet again there. And actually meeting these families and seeing how they had like a boat that's still sitting in their yard from the 80s or 90s when they were able to survive that way.
Yeah.
And now they're not. And then locally, our people really have a perception that like, oh, they just get government money and sit around. And the story is very interesting, really, when you look into it. That's like, well, they're getting money because now there's 94% unemployment because they all spent all their money and remortgaged houses on owning these boats and things, and there's nothing to fish now, So it's kind of that's not the full story. There's two sides, but yeah, it's just it's another way that's kind of crazy. And then so once I had the anthropology and history degree, it was pretty easy. I only, instead of 2 years working on my master's degree, I could spend 1 year just catching up on biology and geology and anatomy, and I would have essentially my physical anthropology, which is archaeology degree. And so I was specifically going to specialize in Neanderthals. So I got to the generic Native American just because that's what we had digs of nearby. But yet again, looking at material culture 10,000 to 8,000 years ago, when the glaciers were receding, finding fishing hooks and holding them in your hand that are that old, and thinking that people have been literally, they built fish traps. They carved them into the side of the rocky areas, and there's spots where mudslides and things have happened. But you can see they had basins where they would keep live fish, and keep them fresh there. And they would hunt with using orcas. They would train the orcas and basically allow the killer whales to have as much meat as they wanted as they gutted it and threw it back. But they would train them to herd them into bays with the teams of Macaw tribe canoers. And they actually have some footage from like the 1920s, which was like the last year they did it.
I've seen them work with dolphins or something as well.
Yeah, so it's kind of crazy. And I know somewhere down in Australia, there's killer whales that also interact with humans in some way. I can't remember. Or they hunt sharks or something. Is that what it is?
I'm not sure. I'll have to look it up. Fish is, how are you? And you didn't have to do that, but thank you for the $5 super chat. Sorry I've missed you, Aqua. I've been a bad fishing mod. Glad to be back down under. Glad to have you back. I just also, one other thing here. Max S. My great uncle was an official in Mogadishu, Somalia, after the government collapse. He and his family eventually had to get out because it got too dangerous.
I was just going to say, does he have his hands? Jeez.
Does he have hands?
Yeah, they cut off hands. That was the big thing to do.
The gang hunt seals. Blake's Aquatics, how you doing? The gang hunt seals?
Yeah, the killer, that's what it is. The killer whales or orcas, whatever you want to call them, they hunt seals and they'll chase them right onto the shore and they'll literally beach themselves. I mean, they can unbeach themselves unlike other aquatic mammals, but they'll literally jump up out of the water to eat a sea lion or a seal. They're pretty epic. And in Seattle, I grew up literally less than a mile to the water where I could see them seasonally. But we have a group that stays here all year, and then we have a seasonal. We call them pods. But
Yeah.
watching them, I would have to say, it's kind of inspired me aquatically. Also, just but it's too hard to keep a 40. So I mean, like, what would it be like a 4-degree aquarium? You need like chillers, and it's just not practical. So we don't really keep anything locally saltwater like they do in Florida and Texas and stuff. But it's very cold water here. It's not far from freezing.
K-Town, who was here at the start, is probably not here anymore, but I know he was doing a cold saltwater tank, which was pretty cool. And he's in Canada. I'm not 100% sure.
Oh, cool.
If he's just above you or if he's on the other side of Canada. But one thing I have to ask you, I've got you running in the background there, your playlist, and I just looked at the back and I'm like, is that a Sub Pop t-shirt? And it was.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm assuming you were in the grunge scene a bit. Have you been to Aberdeen? I'm a massive Nirvana fan.
Of course, yeah. Yeah, I know the area well.
Seattle just for that.
Oh yeah, I go mushroom hunting every year, and it's a great area to go mushroom hunting. I mean, it's a very impoverished area now with really high unemployment and stuff. It kind of has been off and on for a long time, actually. Even then, it was like a lot of logging and fishing people. There's a big bay, and then there's some rivers and canals, so it kind of connects to the ocean. But it's like where the mountains and the ocean meet, and so there's a lot of logging and a lot of mining and a lot of fishing and timber industry stuff, like mills and stuff. And then that all kind of collapsed in the 70s, basically. And it exists still. It's still primarily what they do there, but it's just, half the jobs disappeared basically, and half the people didn't leave. So, but Sub Pop, I grew up, I don't know if you know the bands like Postal Service or Death Cab for Cutie or Modest Mouse, Fleet Foxes, I mean, those were like bands that played like at house parties, growing up.
Death Cab for Cutie. We go to house parties in Melbourne in Australia back in 2000, and we would listen to that.
Yeah, totally. Same here in Seattle, except it was them. And there's also Presidents of the United States of America. Stone Temple Pilots was another big band. There's also
that before your time.
Yeah, it's before my time. I mean, I was only 7 years old when Kurt Cobain died, 7.5 when he died. I recall it really well because it was such a big phenomenon.
How old are you?
I'm 34.
I'm 35. So yeah, I remember it.
Yeah,
I remember exactly where I was. I was in the underground car park at Knox City in Montana.
Yeah. So I remember it also because it was just like overnight everyone was into Seattle. Like Seattle was cool all of a sudden, and even as a kid you're like, what the heck is going on? Like people are taking pictures of every just of people in our city, and like Seattle has changed so much. I mean, so back then Seattle was 90% people born in Washington, and the metro area was around 2 million people. Now the metro area is 4 million people. And in Seattle city limits proper, there was just an article that 64% of people were not even born anywhere in the state that own houses here. So that's house owners, not even renters. So it's a lot of people from Los Angeles and California, San Francisco. And we have quite a few international people too here, actually,
You've got me in like a nostalgia thing over here now. I'm like, Postal Service. Them too.
Who?
Postal Service.
Oh yeah, Postal Service. Rilo Kiley, who's Jenny Lewis. That was her side project. Bikini Kill, and there's another band, Murder City Devils, The Faint. Connor Oberst, if you know who that is. He's closer to my age, and he was. I mean, he's got a band project called the Monsters of Folk that's Jack White's involved with, and but yeah, no, Seattle's a really big music city. I mean, it always has been, and so we had really good music. Macklemore, if you know the rapper Macklemore, he's my age, and we were both into drugs as teenagers. So I knew him when he used to play house parties for like a 24-pack of beer. You know, he used to go by The Wiz or Professor Macklemore.
I think he got a number one. So we have a thing down here. We call it the hottest 100. So there's one really alternative station down here that's it's not a commercial station at all, and they just play everything and everything that's new. So every year they do a thing called the Triple J's Hottest 100, and I'm pretty sure he came number one in that, and that's like a huge thing. It's like the biggest probably you can get in an Australian audience, I suppose, for music.
Okay, yeah. Well, I mean, the other thing is he doesn't have a record label other than his own. So he wasn't on Sub Pop or anything. He was totally independent, like selling CDs in his car. So a lot of people in Seattle actually know him really well because he was such a hustler, you know, like just for a decade trying to get people to check out his music and, you know, playing festivals.
That's crazy. I just remember watching some of the Nirvana documentary. Like, pretty much, if there's Nirvana or Kurt Cobain documentary, I've seen it. And
yeah, me too.
The Sub Pop stuff in the early days, and it's just crazy. I think I also worked with a guy from Epitaph Records. I'm pretty sure he was from Sydney. And he was sent over here to represent Epitaph Down Under, and he worked at a company called Shock Records. We weren't really a rep company as such, but more of a distributor. And for when I was in year 10, so I was 16 years old, I did work experience there. And basically we'd just go out into a factory, we'd pick up a list of CDs that a store had ordered, and you'd go around grabbing all this music and anything from like opera to really old-timey weird stuff to punk, grunge, rock.
Yeah.
And like one of my favorite bands, I remember we had a lunch break and we're just sitting in the foyer just watching. They had Channel V on, which is like MTV. And we're just eating, and then one of our favorite bands just walked through the door. I'm like, dude, that's Friends of Rom. What the? And they're like, hey guys, what are you doing? We're like, I was like, well, actually, they stuffed the serial number on your CD, and we've been changing the CD covers on all of your CDs that are about to go out next week. And he's like, I heard about that. You dudes are the ones doing it. He's like, make sure you get a free one. Anyway, the guy from Epitaph was there. Cool. And he came out to us and he realized that we were into punk music. And he's like, I've got a job for you. And for the next 2 years, we were on the Epitaph street team. And I would get signed CDs from bands like Guttermouth and Hot Water Music and stuff saying, thank you for your work, Josh. And I would just get it delivered in the mail before it was even released. I'm like, and we had Pennywise stickers and Bouncing Soul and stuff. And every kid's locker at school had bloody punk stickers all over it because we just got so many of them.
Yeah, like here, like the bands that I grew up seeing like come through town all the time. Some of them aren't from here, but they later kind of settled here because there's so much music production that goes on here. It's like either LA, Vancouver, or Seattle, like if you're on this half of the country, kind of, you know. And so like Bouncing Souls, Screaming Trees, Circle Jerks, Dead Kennedys, and Jello Biafra, Black Flag, and Henry Rollins was in town all the time. The Vandals, the Casualties, like a lot of the original punk stuff from the States, you know, the 70s and 80s punk bands were around here. And then you've got like Mudhoney and
Mudhoney, wow.
Yeah, Mudhoney, Dead Moon, Green River, Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, all those are Seattle bands. So
yeah. Oh no, it's something that would be a lot of fun to just I almost. Do you follow the NFL at all?
Yeah.
Seattle?
Yeah. Yeah.
I almost. So I'm looking like 10 years ago. I'm watching Gridiron or American football,
Okay.
and I'm like, I'm getting into this. Like, I am really enjoying this, and I'm like, do I go for Seattle because like I want to go and visit there one day?
I saw your San Francisco hat, you jerk.
It was them or 49ers, and I just kept watching, and I'm like, I'm going to go with the 49ers because that reminded me of, you can't really see properly, but the Eagles play tonight. Hopefully they win in the finals today anyway. And they reminded me of my team. And then I stuck with it, and then I watched Seattle go and beat us. Did they beat us in the Super Bowl? No, knocked us out of making a Super Bowl.
Yeah, it depends on the year.
But that's the other thing. Like, I do every time Seattle Seahawks are playing and they're on TV, I make sure I sit down and watch them as well. I love them.
I was surprised. Like, we were a crap team. I mean, until 2005, that year we made it to the Super Bowl and then lost against the Steelers. And that was the first year that I actually tuned into every game, knew all the stats, you know, like was really into it. I mean, I was probably 19 or something like that.
Yeah.
19 or 20. So I think like drinking and being in college was another big part. Like, it was just, you know, a social thing to do too. And then ever since then, they've kind of been a team that's won. But literally before that, we had never even been to the second tier, like since 1974 or whatever it is. And same with our baseball team. Like, we made it to the playoffs in 1995, and that's it. Like, never again. So.
Well, and you won it in 2014, didn't you? 14?
No.
I swear you guys won one. Yeah. Didn't you beat Denver?
Oh, are you talking about Super Bowl again?
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. No, we went to the Super Bowl. We've been to the Super Bowl 3 times, and we've won once, and then we lost against we won against Denver, and we lost against so it was the Steelers the first time, and then who was it the other time? Was it the Patriots, I think.
Yeah.
I think that's how it went. It was either that or the second game to the Super Bowl, like the last 2 playoff games. I can't remember off the top of my head.
You beat us in the NFC Championship, and then you went on and won. I think you beat Denver, and like the 49ers and the Seahawks were easily the 2 best teams that year.
Yeah, when Kaepernick was still playing.
Sorry?
Was that when Kaepernick was still playing that era?
Yeah, and that's when Sherman was like, "You can't put a sorry receiver like Crabtree on me." And I'm like, I hate Sherman, and now he plays for us.
You know, we had a parade in that when the year we won the Super Bowl, and 800,000 people showed up.
That's so cool.
It was like insane. I mean, there was. Yeah,
it was, look at that and then go, and in 5 or 6 years, you're not even allowed out of your house, and you can't go to a game.
I know.
We've been really lucky. Some of the states down here are doing extremely well with COVID, and tonight
you guys are militant about keeping animals and plants and people where they're supposed to be, and the damn cane toads ruined your world.
Exactly. Well, this is the thing, that in Melbourne we are still, like, we're not allowed with that outside 5 kilometers. He's not allowed in the garage. Oh no, there he is. And like tonight though, my team's playing. There's going to be 35,000 people there, and it's just weird looking at it now, going, okay, they're like that under control. They can have 35,000 people in the stadium to watch this game.
Wow, really?
Yeah, and they did the same thing in Adelaide 2 nights ago, and I think last night in Brisbane. So every state's doing really well except for where I live.
Well, we right messed it up, man, here. I literally, on my channel in January, I was like, they need to shut everything down. And like, I'm not usually that kind of guy. Like, I pay attention to things, and I might be a little more in tune than most people and a little more paranoid. But I mean, I was like, this is not going to be good. China does not shut down its economy for no reason. You know what I mean? Like, we should probably take this seriously. And in the US right now, there is such insanity of people like, you got to wear a mask or I'm going to beat you up. And people like, I will not wear my mask. I'd rather die before I have to wear a mask. Like, it's insane. It's like, just put on the mask.
Get one with your favorite football team on it.
Right. Or get one that says I hate masks or whatever. I don't care what it says. You know?
But
Yeah. But it's just bizarre because I mean, you probably heard, but Trump has it now.
Yeah, it's
like
crazy.
Today. So
yeah, it was last night our time. Yeah, we were like,
yeah,
is this a joke? Everyone's like, is it a political stunt? What's going on?
Well, we are curious too, just because he's not like when he says something, it's usually not true. So that's what I've observed. So that's why I'm like, so does that mean he doesn't have it or what? I have my own opinions, but I don't want to piss people off. But no, I feel like there's certain like things that you don't even have to go to the it's not like a controversy to say that he exaggerates and says some far out there stuff.
Dude, I've raced home. Like, it doesn't really affect us at all, but I did race home to have lunch in front of the TV when the debate was on. I was like, I got to watch this.
Oh, that was such a dumpster fire. I was like,
it was fun to watch though.
Can they just have boxing gloves and can we just call this good? It was like watching two like grandpas fight. I mean, they're both like 75 years old, you know, like
yeah.
He keeps calling Biden old, and Biden's like 2.5 years older than him. I mean, yeah, it's just funny. So, I mean, no matter what, my opinion is like some entrenched, basically aristocracy, well-to-do person will get in power and serve corporations and companies and causes that have always been served. And like, it kind of shifts a little bit, but like everyone thinks that, oh, it's so far left, so far right. If you go to Europe or other parts of the world, like our left is considered their right still, you know, like we don't have a socialist party or anything that with any representation. So
there's lots of extreme things. I think, I don't know. I don't live there. And I sort of, I appreciate so much stuff that comes out of America. So I watch with interest, but, and yeah, even like, you know, chatting with you today, I reckon I would now say, yep, I have a mate that lives in Seattle. We'll continue to chat.
Yeah.
In the future, we're going to have to do another episode because we're over an hour and a half already.
Yeah. I just don't shut up. Like I can tell you and I would be friends in real life. And I guess that's probably part of the problem is we didn't like touch off like, oh, let's talk about this, show that tank. I mean, people can come to my channel if they want to see my tanks.
That's the point of this. It's like, that's what I like about the Joe Rogan Experience is they just talk and it's like you're sitting in a room with mates having a chat. And that's what I like because there's plenty of other people out there doing, you know, having guests on their channel and saying, now let's talk about this fish or let's talk about this topic. I just wanted to go, who are you? What are you doing? And why do we do the same thing? Let's share our love for the hobby and there's still 22 people here an hour and a half later. So.
Well, and I that's what I love about, you know, the subscribers and stuff too of my channel and the community that have kind of built on between Facebook and on YouTube is just kind of like a lot of them. I mean, they know, oh, you're having a kid in 2 months or, oh, your dog just died. Or, I mean, they know each other as people. And so a lot of them are, you know, Republicans, Democrats, like doesn't matter like what your day-to-day persona is like. You know, you got friends that 80-year-olds that are friends with 18-year-olds, you know, because they like fish. So it's just kind of interesting, like with the anonymity of the internet, like you can decide when you want to drop that anonymity if you're just a viewer or a subscriber. And it's a little different when you're the actual person on the screen, but
I know I gotta thank Zen Ginger as well. Like,
I love her.
If anyone in the starts talking about politics, I will start banning. Guys, shut up! Stop talking about this stuff.
Of course.
821, how are you? Chris John, Fishy Beers again. Max, see you later. Mary Page Flynn, welcome.
Oh yeah.
You'll have to watch the replay. Jeff, how you doing? Dan Butts, a few people that I have seen in here for a little while that I just haven't said hello while we've been chatting. I appreciate you guys.
Hey guys, thanks for coming and checking out his channel too. Mary and Dan and
absolutely. Thank
Zen
you, guys.
Ginger
and Derek Smith. Cool. We'll have to leave it there only because I'm going to get in trouble for doing my chores, and I won't be allowed to watch the football today. So I better
it's like 11:30 over there. What time is it?
Yeah, it's like 20-1.
Oh, okay. All right.
So middle of the day, there's a big thing of sand out there that I got to go put on the grass because the ground's not drying properly. So no aquascaping for me, landscaping.
All right, terrascaping.
Yeah. But definitely enjoyed having a chat. And
it's been a pleasure. You're welcome if you ever come to Seattle, if you're ever allowed to come here again. You're welcome to. You got a place to crash. We're looking for a house right now so that it's just such an expensive market. It's $1 million for a house pretty much in the city. So we've been looking just outside for $500,000 and trying to find a fixer-upper basically. And so we're hunting, but a fish room is one of the must-haves. So hopefully if you do come out in a year or something, I'll have, before then I'll have a nice room set up rather than a bedroom with 15 tanks.
Hell yeah, that'd be awesome. I know I got the garage here, but it's a bit of a fight over whether it stays like this or a car comes in here.
Sure,
Dog stopping any car.
The sun's a little intense for the paint job out down there too. Like up here, we don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, true. All right.
Well, you have a good day. Thanks for having me.
You too. Thanks everyone for joining.